The Great Hall of the Valorian Empire was bigger than anything Unipark had ever seen. Giant pillars made of black stone rose toward a ceiling so high that clouds actually floated inside the building. Thousands of alien creatures sat in curved rows, their strange eyes all looking down at the small human woman standing alone in the center of the floor. Una kept her back straight and her hands steady. She would not let them see her fear. She had traveled for 3 months across the stars to reach this place. Her husband, Tae-ho Kim, had died 6 months ago. He had been a human diplomat who served the Valorian Empire for 20 years. The aliens had respected him. They had given him a title and lands. A whole mining colony on a distant moon belonged to him. Now it belonged to no one. And Una had come to claim it. High Arbiter Nolus sat on an elevated throne at the front of the chamber. He was an insectoid creature, nearly 3 meters tall, the hard shell covering his body, and large compound eyes that reflected the light like broken mirrors. His mandibles clicked together as he studied the documents floating in front of him on a holographic screen. "Ambassador Unipark of Earth," he said. His voice was cold and mechanical, translated through a device that made it sound almost human. "You come before this court to claim the estate of the late Ambassador Tae-ho Kim. Is this correct?" "Yes, High Arbiter," Una replied. Her voice echoed in the massive hall. "And on what grounds do you make this claim?" "I am his wife, his widow. Under Valorian inheritance law, a spouse may claim the estate of a deceased partner." Nolus made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like stones grinding together. "You are correct about the law, Ambassador. However, you seem to have forgotten one important detail." He leaned forward on his throne. "Valorian inheritance law requires that a claiming spouse must have produced an heir, a child of the bloodline. Do you have such a child, Ambassador Park?" The chamber fell silent. Una felt thousands of eyes pressing down on her like a physical weight. "I do not," she admitted. "Not yet." The hall erupted in laughter. It was a terrible sound. Clicking and hissing and bubbling and screeching. Every species had its own way of showing amusement. Together they created a noise that made Una's ears ring. A Valorian representative stood up from his seat. "The human female is barren," he announced with obvious pleasure. "Their species is known for its pathetic reproductive capabilities. 1 child at a time, and even that is often impossible for them." More laughter. A crystalline being called Amordai spoke next. Its voice rang like a bell. "We can divide ourselves into dozens of copies. The humans cannot even produce a single offspring reliably." "How sad the Fen produce 12 young per cycle," another voice added. "Humans are lucky to manage one in a lifetime." Una stood in the center of the mockery and said nothing. She let them laugh. She let them point and whisper. She had known this would happen. Tae-ho had warned her years ago about how the aliens viewed humans. "They think we are weak," he had told her once. Holding her hand as they watched a sunset on a planet far from Earth. "They see our short lives and our fragile bodies and they think we are nothing. But they do not understand us, Una. They do not know what we can do when we are desperate." Una waited until the laughter began to fade. Then she raised her hand and spoke in a voice that cut through the noise like a blade. "I invoke the right of continuation." The chamber fell silent instantly. Even High Arbiter Nolus seemed surprised. His mandibles stopped clicking. "The right of continuation," Una continued, "is an ancient law of this court. It allows a claimant to request a grace period to produce an heir before a final judgment is made. I am invoking this right now." Nolus studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to consult with several robed advisors standing behind his throne. They whispered among themselves in a language Una did not understand. Finally, Nolus turned back to face her. "You are correct, Ambassador. The right of continuation does exist in our ancient laws. It has not been invoked in over 300 years, but it remains valid." He paused. "You will be granted 1 standard galactic cycle to produce a bloodline heir. That is 14 of your Earth months. If you return without a child that carries the blood of both you and your late husband, your claim will be denied permanently. The estate will become imperial property." Una bowed her head slightly. "I understand and accept these terms." Then this hearing is concluded. Nola struck the floor with his ceremonial staff. The boom echoed through the chamber like thunder. As Yuna turned to leave, she heard the whispers following her, like shadows. Foolish human. She is wasting everyone's time. 14 months. She could not produce a child in 14 years. The humans are desperate creatures, always grasping for things beyond their reach. She will fail. They always fail. Yuna walked through the massive doors and out into the corridor beyond. A human guard was waiting for her there. His name was Juno Kong, and he had served as her security escort for the past year. "Ambassador," he said quietly, falling into step beside her. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, Juno. They were cruel in there. I could hear them laughing from outside." Yuna smiled, though there was no happiness in it. "Let them laugh. They do not know what we are capable of." Juno looked at her with concern. "Ambassador, forgive me, but the doctors on Earth said that you cannot. That it is not possible for you too." "The doctors said many things," Yuna interrupted. "They said space travel was impossible once. They said humans would never leave their solar system. They said we would never cure cancer or extend our lifespans or build cities on other worlds." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Humans have a long history of doing impossible things. Juno, this will simply be one more." She continued walking toward the transport ship that waited outside. Behind her, the alien court continued to laugh. They would not be laughing for long. The journey back to Earth took 3 months. Yuna spent most of that time in her cabin, reading medical journals and sending messages to doctors across the planet. She had 14 months to do what everyone said could not be done. Every day that passed was a day lost. When her ship finally entered Earth's orbit, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. A shuttle carried her down to Seoul. Where the rain was falling gently on the old city, modern towers of glass and steel stood next to ancient temples. Flying vehicles moved silently through the gray sky. This was her home. This was where humans had learned to overcome every obstacle placed before them. She went directly to the Seoul Institute of Advanced Sciences. The building was enormous, filled with laboratories and research centers dedicated to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Yuna had arranged a meeting with Dr. Woojin Beek, a geneticist whose work was considered controversial by galactic standards but revolutionary by human ones. Dr. Beek was a thin man in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes behind round glasses. He met Yuna in his office, which was cluttered with holographic displays and stacks of research papers. "Ambassador Park," he said, shaking her hand. "I received your messages. I understand your situation." He gestured for her to sit down. "I will be honest with you. What you are asking for is difficult, but it is not impossible." "Tell me everything," Yuna said. Dr. Beek activated a holographic display. Images of cells and DNA strands floated in the air between them. "The alien species do not understand human reproductive science," he explained. "They see reproduction as a simple biological function. Either it works or it does not. But we have learned to guide the process, to help it along when nature fails us." He showed her images of a strange device. It looked like a large glass container filled with clear liquid. "This is an artificial womb," Dr. Beek said. "We have been developing this technology for over 50 years. It can sustain an embryo from conception to full development. The child grows inside this container, receiving all the nutrients and protection it needs." Yuna stared at the image. "And you can create an embryo? Even though I cannot conceive naturally?" "Yes, we need 2 things. First, we need healthy genetic material from you. This can be extracted from your cells. Second, we need genetic material from your late husband." Taiho had samples stored, Yuna said quickly. Before he left for his last mission, he made deposits at a genetic preservation facility. He said it was standard procedure for diplomats working in dangerous regions. Dr. Beek nodded. "Good. Then we have everything we need. We will combine the genetic material to create an embryo, then place it in the artificial womb. The child will grow for approximately 11 months. After that, we will perform the birth procedure, and you will have your heir." 11 months, Yuna repeated, That leaves me 3 months to return to the Valorian court. It will be close, but it is possible. Yuna was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. Will the child be normal? Healthy? Dr. Beak smiled gently. Ambassador, children born through artificial womb technology are indistinguishable from those born naturally. In some ways, they are healthier because we can monitor their development constantly and address any problems immediately. Your child will be as real and as human as any other child on Earth. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. When can we begin? Immediately. If you are ready, I am ready. The next several months were the longest of Yuna's life. She visited the facility every single day. She watched the tiny embryo grow inside the artificial womb. At first, it was just a cluster of cells, too small to see without magnification. Then it became something more. A shape, a form, a heartbeat. Yuna talked to the growing child constantly. She told it about its father, about how brave and kind Taiho had been. She told it about Earth, about the oceans and mountains and cities filled with millions of people. She told it about the stars, about the vast galaxy waiting beyond the sky. You are going to see such wonderful things, she whispered to the glass container. You are going to grow up in a universe full of miracles. And no matter what anyone says, you are a miracle too. Meanwhile, the galactic news networks mocked her. The Valorian broadcasts ran constant stories about the foolish human woman who thought she could cheat biology. Ambassador. Park has returned to her primitive planet, one commentator said with obvious amusement. Perhaps she thinks she can grow a child from the soil like a vegetable. Humans are desperate creatures, another added. They cannot accept their own limitations. This is why they will always be inferior to the greater species of the galaxy. Yuna ignored them. She had more important things to focus on. On the 340th day, Dr. Beak called her to the facility. His voice on the communicator was calm, but Yuna could hear the excitement beneath it. It is time, Ambassador. The child is ready. Yuna rushed to the facility. When she arrived, Dr. Beak and his team were preparing for the final procedure. They carefully opened the artificial womb and lifted out the tiny body inside. The baby cried for the first time. It was the most beautiful sound Yuna had ever heard. Dr. Beak placed the child in Yuna's arms. She looked down at the tiny face. Dark eyes looked back up at her. A small tuft of black hair covered the baby's head. 10 tiny fingers grasped at the air. She is healthy, Dr. Beak said softly. Perfect in every way. Congratulations, Ambassador. You have a daughter? Yuna held her child close and let the tears finally fall. Hannah, she whispered. Your name is Hannah. It means flower. It also means one, because you are my one and only, my miracle. The baby made a small sound and nestled closer to her mother. Outside, the galaxy continued to laugh at the impossible. Inside, Yuna held the impossible in her arms. The journey back to the Valorian Empire took 3 months. This time, Yuna was not alone. She carried Hannah in her arms, and 2 members of the Earth Diplomatic Medical Corps traveled with her. Dr. Minho, Lee was a specialist in genetic verification, brought specifically to prove that Hannah was exactly who Yuna claimed her to be. News of her return spread across the galaxy before her ship even arrived. Every major network carried the story. The human woman was coming back. She claimed to have a child. The court was preparing for her arrival. Most commentators assumed it was a trick. Some said she had adopted a child and would try to pass it off as her own. Others suggested she had paid someone to give birth for her. A few even claimed she had stolen an infant from somewhere. No one believed she had actually produced her own biological child. That was simply impossible. When Yuna's ship docked at the Valorian station, she was met by a crowd of journalists and curious onlookers. Cameras and recording devices floated around her like insects. Voices shouted questions in a dozen different languages. Ambassador Park, is it true you have a child? How did you do it? Is the baby really yours? Yuna said nothing. She held Hannah close to her chest and walked through the crowd with her head held high. Juno Kong and the medical team surrounded her. Pushing back the reporters, the grand hall of the Valorian court was even more crowded than before. News of Yuna's return had attracted representatives from across the galaxy. Every seat was filled. Beings stood in the aisles and crowded against the walls. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. High Arbiter Nolus sat on his throne, his compound eyes fixed on the entrance. When Yuna walked through the massive doors, a hush fell over the entire chamber. She walked slowly to the center of the floor. She was still carrying Hannah, who was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the thousands of alien eyes watching her. "No," Ellis spoke first. "Ambassador Yuna Park, you have returned within the time limit granted to you. You claimed you would produce a bloodline heir. Present this heir now, if one exists." "Yeah." Yuna lifted Hannah slightly so the court could see her. "This is Hannah Kim, daughter of Taiho Kim and Yuna Park. She was born 11 months ago on Earth. She is my heir." The chamber erupted in noise. Shouts of disbelief, accusations of fraud, demands for proof. The chaos was overwhelming. Noel struck his staff against the floor. The boom silenced the crowd. "Impossible," the High Arbiter said. "Our records clearly indicated that you were incapable of reproduction. You could not have given birth to this child." "I did not give birth to her," Yuna admitted. "But she is still my child." This caused even more confusion. Nolus leaned forward. "Explain yourself, human." Dr. Minho Lee stepped forward. He activated a holographic display that showed complex genetic data. "High Arbiter, honored representatives," he began. "I am Dr. Minho Lee of the Earth, Diplomatic Medical Corps. I am here to present certified genetic analysis of the child known as Hannah Kim." The holographic display showed 2 DNA strands side by side. "This strand," Dr. Lee said, pointing to the left one, "belongs to the late ambassador, Taiho Kim. It was obtained from samples stored at a genetic preservation facility before his death. This strand," he pointed to the right one, "belongs to Ambassador Yuna Park." 3rd strand appeared in the center. "This is the DNA of the child, Hannah Kim. As you can see, she carries exactly 50% of her genetic material from each parent. She is, without any doubt, the biological daughter of both Taiho Kim and Yuna Park." The chamber fell silent as the alien representatives studied the data. "But how?" a Valorian diplomat demanded. "The female was barren. She could not conceive." Dr. Lee nodded. "That is correct. Ambassador Park could not conceive through natural means. So we used another method. Human scientists have developed technology called artificial womb reproduction. We combined genetic material from both parents to create an embryo, then allowed that embryo to develop inside a specially designed container. After 11 months, the child was born healthy and whole." The silence stretched on. Then, suddenly, chaos erupted again. "This is unnatural. They grew a child like a plant in a garden. This violates the sanctity of life. Humans are playing gods." Yuna raised her voice above the noise. "Your laws state that I must present a bloodline heir. Hannah carries my blood and my husband's blood. How she came into this world does not matter. What matters is that she exists. What matters is that she is real." She looked down at her daughter, who had woken up from all the noise. Hannah looked around at the strange alien faces with curious eyes. She did not cry. She did not seem afraid. "Look at her," Yuna continued. "She is not a trick. She is not a fake. She is a living, breathing human being. My daughter." My heir Nola studied the genetic data for a long time. The chamber waited in tense silence. Finally, the High Arbiter spoke. "The law does not specify the method of conception. It only requires that the heir carry the bloodline of both parents." He paused. "The genetic evidence is clear. The child is legitimate." He struck his staff against the floor one final time. "The claim of Ambassador Yuna Park is valid. The estate of the late Ambassador Taiho Kim, including all properties, titles, and territories, will be transferred to her and her heir immediately." Una closed her eyes and held Hannah tightly. They had done it. Against all odds, against all expectations, had won. When she opened her eyes again, she saw something she had not expected. Some of the alien representatives were not looking at her with anger or disgust. They were looking at her with something else. Wonder. And perhaps just a little bit of hope. In the weeks after the court's decision, the galaxy could not stop talking about what had happened. Every news network, every discussion forum, every gathering of beings across 1,000 worlds had the same topic of conversation. The humans had done something impossible. Opinions were divided sharply. Many species were horrified by what Una had revealed. The Valorians called humans biological engineers and spoke the words like a curse. The Mordai accused humanity of playing with the sacred forces of life. Religious leaders from dozens of worlds gave speeches, condemning human science as an offense against nature. Protests erupted on several planets. Crowds gathered outside human embassies, demanding that Earth be expelled from the galactic community. Some extremists called for even harsher punishments. Humans had crossed a line, they said. Humans had gone too far, but not everyone agreed. Una was staying at the human diplomatic compound on the Valorian station, trying to arrange the transfer of her husband's estate when she received an unexpected visitor. A small creature appeared at her door, escorted by station security. The being was barely 1 meter tall, covered in soft gray fur, with large dark eyes and long ears that twitched nervously. "Ambassador Park," the creature said in a quiet voice. "My name is Bira. I am a representative of the Fen people. I have come to speak with you privately, if you will allow it." Una invited her inside. They sat across from each other while Hannah slept in a small crib nearby. "I apologize for coming unannounced," Bira said. "But what I have to say cannot be discussed through official channels." "Not yet." "I am listening," Una said. Bira's large eyes filled with tears. "The Fen are dying, Ambassador. Our species has suffered from a genetic condition for generations. Our children are born weak. Many do not survive their first year. We have tried everything our science can offer, but nothing works. Every generation, fewer of us remain." She looked at the sleeping baby in the crib. "When I saw your child, when I heard what human science had done, I felt something I had not felt in many years. Hope." Bira clasped her small hands together. "I must ask you, Ambassador, could your technology help us? Could it save our children?" Una was silent for a long moment. She looked at Hannah, then back at the desperate mother sitting before her. She saw herself in those tear-filled eyes. The same fear, the same determination, the same refusal to accept the impossible. As Una said finally, "I believe we can help you." Word spread quickly. Una contacted Earth and explained the situation. Within days, a team of specialists from the Seoul Institute was preparing to travel to the Valorian station. Dr. Woojin Beek himself agreed to lead the research effort, but the Fen were not the only ones who came seeking help. A delegation from the Caldori arrived next. They were tall, elegant beings with silver skin and voices like music. Centuries ago, their homeworld had been damaged by radiation from a nearby star. The radiation had made natural reproduction impossible for them. They had survived by cloning themselves, but clones were not true children. Each generation was weaker than the last. Their species was slowly fading away. "We heard about your technology," the Caldori ambassador said. "We heard that humans can create life even when nature says no. Please, Ambassador Park, help us." Then came the Thalian, a species suffering from genetic degradation. Then the Vorix, whose females could no longer carry children to term. Then the Sen, the Kalar, the Morith. Species after species came to the human compound, each with their own tragic story, each begging for the same thing. Help. Hope. A future. Una worked tirelessly to coordinate everything. She sent messages to governments on Earth, to scientific institutions, to medical organizations. She argued, persuaded, and sometimes demanded. Humanity had a chance to change its position in the galaxy, she told them. They could not let this opportunity pass. Earth responded. Ships carrying doctors, scientists, and equipment began arriving at the Valorian station. Dr. Beak established a research center in neutral space where representatives from multiple species could work together. Human medical teams were sent to worlds across the Outer Rim. Within 6 months, the first success story emerged. A Fen child was born using human artificial womb technology. The baby was healthy and strong, with none of the genetic weaknesses that had plagued her species for generations. Her parents named her with a human word they had learned, hope. The news spread like fire across the galaxy. More successes followed. Caldori children, Thelian children, Vorix children. Species that had been dying were suddenly being reborn. High Arbiter Nolus watched these developments from his throne with growing unease. The humans were changing everything. They were no longer just tolerated guests in the Valorian Empire. They were becoming essential, powerful, important. The same species that had been mocked for its reproductive limitations was now saving other species from extinction. The same creatures that had been called inferior were now performing miracles. During a private meeting with his advisors, Nolus expressed his concerns. Humans are gaining too much influence, he said. Every species they help becomes their ally, their friend, their debtor. What can we do? An advisor asked. We cannot stop them from helping others. That would make us look cruel. Nolus was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, a strange sound like wind through dry leaves. Perhaps we cannot stop them, he admitted. Perhaps we can only watch and learn. The humans have taught us something important, though I am not certain many of us are ready to hear it. What is that, High Arbiter? Nolus looked out the window at the stars. That being small and fragile does not mean being weak. That limitations can be overcome. That sometimes the species you laugh at are the ones you should have been watching most carefully. Somewhere in neutral space, Dr. Beak was holding another newborn child. Another miracle. Another impossible thing made real. And it had all started with one woman who refused to accept no for an answer. 5 years had passed since Una Park first stood before the Valorian court with her claim. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. What had started as one woman's desperate fight for her husband's legacy had grown into something much larger. Something that would shape the future of countless species for generations to come. The Grand Hall of the Valorian Empire looked different now. The same black pillars still rose toward the clouded ceiling. The same curved rows of seats still filled the chamber. But the atmosphere was completely transformed. Where there had once been mockery and contempt, there was now respect and anticipation. Una walked through the massive doors with her head held high. She was not alone this time. Behind her came representatives from 17 different species. Fen and Caldori, Thelian and Vorix, Sen and Calor. Each of them owed their species' survival to human science. Each of them had come to witness this historic day. Beside Una walked a 5-year-old girl with bright eyes and black hair that she wore in 2 small braids. Hannah Kim looked around the enormous chamber with wonder, holding tightly to her mother's hand. "Mama," she whispered. "There are so many people here. They came to see something important, my love," Una whispered back. "They came to see the future." A new High Arbiter sat on the elevated throne. His name was Velith, a moderate Valorian who had risen to power on a platform of cooperation between species. He had replaced Nolus 2 years ago, after the old Arbiter retired. Many said Nolus had grown tired. Others said he had grown wise enough to know when his time had passed. Velith raised his hand for silence. The chamber obeyed immediately. "We are gathered here today for a historic occasion," he announced. His voice was warmer than Nolus's had ever been. "Today, we formally establish the Galactic Institute for Reproductive Sciences. This organization will be a joint effort between humanity and all member species of the Valorian Empire. Its purpose is simple but profound, to ensure that no species in our galaxy faces extinction because of biological limitations." Applause filled the chamber. It came from thousands of hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages. It was the sound of hope. Velith continued. This institute would not exist without the courage and determination of one person. A human woman who stood in this very hall 5 years ago and refused to accept what everyone told her was impossible. Ambassador Una Park, please come forward. Una walked to the center of the floor. Hannah stayed close beside her, looking up at the towering aliens with more curiosity than fear. Ambassador Park Velith said, "Would you like to address the assembly?" Una nodded and turned to face the gathered representatives. She saw Fen mothers holding children who should never have been born. She saw Kaldori families who had believed their species would fade away within a few generations. She saw hope in 1,000 different eyes. 5 years ago, I came to this court with nothing but grief and a desperate wish, she began. Her voice was calm and clear. My husband had died. I wanted to preserve his legacy, and I was told that I could not because I was barren, because humans were inferior, because our species was limited by our biology. She paused, letting the memories wash over her. You laughed at me. You called me foolish. You said I was wasting everyone's time. You told me that humans could not overcome their nature. She looked down at Hannah, who smiled back at her. But you were wrong. Not because humans are special. Not because we are better than anyone else. But because humans have learned one simple truth. Limitations are not walls. They are challenges. And challenges can be overcome. She lifted her gaze to the assembly again. We are small. We are fragile. We live short lives compared to many of you. But we do not surrender. When the oceans blocked our path, we built ships. When the sky was beyond our reach, we built rockets. When diseases killed our children, we created medicine. And when our bodies failed us, we found another way to create life. The chamber was completely silent. Every being was listening. This is not about humans being superior, Una continued. This is about all of us working together, sharing knowledge, helping each other. The Fen scientists have taught us things about genetic stability that we never knew. The Kaldori have improved our artificial womb technology in ways we never imagined. Every species has something to offer. Every species has something to learn. She put her hand on Hannah's shoulder. My daughter was born from human technology. But she was also born from love, from hope, from the refusal to give up. She is proof that impossible things can become possible. And now, there are thousands of children across this galaxy who are proof of the same thing. Velith stood from his throne. Ambassador Park, on behalf of the Valorian Empire and all its member species, I thank you. You have given us more than technology. You have given us a new understanding of what it means to survive. What it means to hope. The applause that followed was the loudest Una had ever heard. After the ceremony, as the crowds began to disperse, Hannah tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama, can I tell you something? Una knelt down to her daughter's level. Of course, my love. What is it? When I grow up, I want to help other children be born. Like how Dr. Beak helped me. I want to give them a chance to. Una felt tears forming in her eyes. She pulled Hannah into a tight hug. Then that is exactly what you will do, she whispered. And your father would be so proud of you. They walked together out of the Great Hall. Past the memorial plaque that had been installed in honor of Taiho Kim, Una stopped and touched it gently. We did it, Taiho, she said softly. Our legacy lives on. In Hannah. In all the children. In the future we built together. Outside, the stars waited. And humanity, once mocked and underestimated, had taken its place among them as healers and partners and friends. The galaxy had laughed at Una Park. Now, the galaxy thanked her. And somewhere, among all those distant stars, new children were being born. New miracles. New possibilities. This was the human legacy. This was hope.